You're standing at the altar in your dream wedding dress, surrounded by 200 guests, when your groom leans in for what everyone thinks is a sweet whisper and tells you he never loved you, that he's only marrying you to destroy you. What would you do? Run? Cry? Collapse? Well, Lily Monroe did none of those things. What she did instead will make your jaw hit the floor. See, what her groom Daniel didn't know was that Lily had been playing chess while he was playing checkers. And by the time their wedding ceremony was over, he was the one left humiliated, exposed, and completely ruined in front of everyone who mattered. Let me tell you how we got here. 3 years ago, Lily Monroe was living what most people would call a perfect life. She was 28, the vice president of strategic development at Monroe Tech, and came from one of the most respected families in Seattle. Her father, Robert Monroe, had built a cybersecurity empire from a cramped garage in 1995, and by 2021, Monroe Tech was protecting Fortune 500 companies from digital threats worth billions. Lily had an MBA from Wharton, spoke 3 languages, and had been featured on Forbes 30 Under 30 list 2 years running. She lived in a stunning downtown penthouse, drove a white Tesla Model S, and had a closet full of designer suits that made her feel powerful in board meetings. But despite all her success, Lily had always been a hopeless romantic. She kept a worn copy of Pride and Prejudice on her nightstand, believed in fairy tales, in true love, in finding that one person who would choose her for who she was at 2 a.m. with no makeup on, not what her last name could do for them in the business world. Her dating life had been disappointing. Most guys either got intimidated when they learned about her family's wealth or they became weirdly obsessed with it. She'd had one relationship that lasted 8 months, but it ended when she overheard her ex telling his friends he was basically dating a walking trust fund. That's why when she met Daniel Hayes at a charity gala for Seattle Children's Hospital, she was so careful not to mention her last name right away. Daniel was magnetic. 6'2", perfectly tailored Navy suit with this smile that could light up a room, and these piercing blue eyes that seemed to see right through you. He had dark hair that was just messy enough to look effortless, and when he laughed, which he did often, it was this rich, warm sound that made everyone around him want to join in. He introduced himself as working in corporate finance, came from Portland originally, and when he looked at Lily while they talked by the silent auction tables, she felt like she was the only woman in the room of 300 people. You know, he said, leaning closer to be heard over the string quartet, "I've been to dozens of these events, and they usually bore me to tears, but something tells me tonight's going to be different." Their first date was supposed to be dinner at a nice restaurant in Capitol Hill. Instead, they ended up talking so long that the restaurant closed around them. Daniel suggested they grab coffee and keep walking, so they wandered through Pike Place Market at midnight, sharing stories and laughing until Lily's cheeks hurt. They talked about everything, their dreams, their fears, their most embarrassing childhood memories. Daniel told her about growing up as the middle child of 5 kids, always feeling overlooked, always having to fight for attention at the dinner table. How his dad worked 3 jobs to keep them afloat, how his mom clipped coupons and made Christmas magic happen on a budget of $50. "I swore I'd never let money be that kind of stress in my life," he said, his voice getting quieter. "I'd work however hard I had to, be however smart I had to make sure I could take care of the people I love." Lily's heart went out to him. Here was someone who understood what it meant to work for something, to appreciate success because you'd seen what it was like without it. When they finally made it back to her building at 5:30 a.m., they stood in the lobby talking for another hour because neither wanted the night to end. "I've never felt understood like this," he whispered to her as they watched the sun come up through the floor-to-ceiling windows of her apartment, both of them still fully dressed, sharing a cup of coffee and a blanket on her couch. And Lily, she was completely, utterly, hopelessly in love. For the first time in her adult life, she'd found someone who seemed to like her for her laugh, her terrible jokes, the way she got excited about new tech innovations, not for the Monroe name or the trust fund or the connections she could provide in the business world. For 2.5 years, Daniel was everything Lily had ever dreamed of. He remembered that she liked her coffee with oat milk and 2 sugars, that she was obsessed with true crime podcasts, and that she got cranky if she didn't eat something by 2 p.m. He'd surprise her with handwritten notes tucked into her laptop bag. Little things like, hope your presentation goes perfectly today, or you're going to change the world and I'm so proud to be yours. He made her laugh until her stomach hurt, usually by doing terrible impressions of celebrities or making up ridiculous backstories for strangers they'd see on the street. He was supportive of her career, would listen to her vent about difficult clients or celebrate with champagne when she closed a big deal, and seemed genuinely proud to be with her. When she worked late nights preparing for board meetings, Daniel would show up at her office at 9 p.m. with Thai food from her favorite restaurant and sit quietly in the corner, just keeping her company while she worked. When she had to travel for business, he'd send her pictures of random things throughout the day. A funny bag he saw, a sunset, a coffee shop with a punny name, just to make her smile. But looking back, Lily would realize there were signs. Small things that didn't quite add up, like pieces of a puzzle that almost fit but not quite. Like how Daniel never wanted to talk about his work in detail. He'd say he was restructuring corporate debt portfolios or analyzing market risk assessments. But when Lily, who understood finance perfectly well, asked follow-up questions, he'd change the subject or make a joke. Work is boring, he'd say, pulling her close. I'd rather hear about your day. Tell me about the Seattle Public School security contract. Did they accept your proposal? Or how he always seemed more interested in her father's business deals than in her personal life. When she tried to talk about her friends, her hobbies, her dreams of maybe writing a novel someday, Daniel would listen politely, but without much engagement. But mention a Monroe Tech acquisition or a competitor strategy, and suddenly he was asking detailed questions. Your dad is so brilliant, Daniel would say over dinner at their favorite Italian place on Capitol Hill. How does he always stay ahead of everyone else? What's his secret? Like, how did he know to pivot into AI security before anyone else saw it coming? At the time, Lily thought it was sweet. Her boyfriend was interested in her family. He wanted to understand the world she came from. He was trying to be the kind of partner who could contribute to conversations at family dinners. God, she was naive. She also noticed that Daniel had expensive tastes for someone who claimed to be comfortable but not rich. His apartment in Belltown had floor-to-ceiling windows and cost at least $4,000 a month. His car was a BMW that had to be worth $60,000. His watch was a Rolex Submariner that retailed for $15,000. When she asked about it, Daniel had explanations. I'm good with investments, he'd say. I put everything into crypto early and got lucky. Or, my grandfather left me some money when he passed. The proposal came on a beautiful spring evening in May, almost exactly 3 years after they'd met. Daniel had planned this elaborate surprise. He had somehow gotten permission to set up a private dinner on the rooftop of the Columbia Center, Seattle's tallest building. There were thousands of rose petals, candles everywhere, and a violinist playing All of Me by John Legend, which had become their song after he had sung it to her, terribly and loudly, during a karaoke night. The whole city was spread out below them, twinkling in the twilight, and Lily was wearing the blue dress Daniel had bought her for her birthday, the one he said made her eyes look like the ocean. He got down on one knee right where they could see Pike Place Market far below, the same place where they had wandered and talked all night on their first date, and said all the right words. Lily Monroe, he said, his voice shaking just enough to seem genuine. 3 years ago, you turned my world upside down. You made me believe in love, in partnership, in the idea that two people can build something beautiful together. You're my everything, my future, my heart. I can't imagine my life without you in it. Will you marry me? The ring was perfect, a vintage-style oval diamond, exactly what she had pinned to her secret Pinterest board 2 years earlier. How had he known? She said yes before he even finished asking, tears streaming down her face, completely overwhelmed by the romance of it all. What she didn't know was that Daniel had hired a private investigator to dig through her social media accounts, her online shopping history, even her conversations with friends to find out exactly what kind of proposal she'd want. What she didn't know was that the ring was paid for with money from Hartwell Industries, and what she didn't know was that there was a photographer hidden across the street taking pictures not for their engagement album, but for Daniel's file, proof that the Monroe Project was progressing according to plan.
The engagement was a whirlwind. Lily threw herself into wedding planning with the same intensity she brought to everything else in her life. She booked the Fairmont Olympic Hotel's Georgian ballroom for the reception, the same place her parents had gotten married 32 years earlier. She found a ceremony venue at the Seattle Asian Art Museum with its stunning glass walls and view of Volunteer Park. She wanted it to be perfect, not just for the photos or the Instagram posts, but for them, for their love story. Daniel seemed happy to let her take the lead, which Lily appreciated. She knew some guys got weird about wedding planning, felt emasculated by caring about flowers and table settings. But Daniel was different. "Whatever makes you happy, babe," he'd say with that killer smile, wrapping his arms around her while she agonized over invitation fonts at their kitchen table. "I just want to marry you. Everything else is just details." But during those 8 months of planning, something started to feel off. Daniel would disappear for hours without explanation. He'd say he was going to the gym, but come back without the post-workout glow, his hair not even messed up. He'd claim he was meeting old college friends, but when Lily suggested she'd love to meet them, he'd brush her off. "They're boring finance bros. Trust me, you wouldn't like them." When Lily asked where he'd been, he'd get defensive in a way that felt new and sharp. "I'm planning surprises for you," he'd say, his jaw tightening just slightly. "Can't a guy have some privacy? God, Lily, you're starting to sound like a paranoid girlfriend." That stung. Lily had never been possessive or controlling. She'd always prided herself on being the cool girlfriend who gave her partner space. But something in Daniel's tone made her feel like she was being unreasonable for wanting to know where her fiancé spent his Saturday afternoons. He also started asking more pointed questions about her father's business. Not casual questions anymore, but specific, technical ones that seemed almost like an interrogation. "What's Monroe Tech's biggest vulnerability right now?" he asked one night over dinner at Canlis, apropos of nothing. "Like, if you were a competitor, what would you target?" "Why would you ask something like that?" Lily laughed nervously. "I just want to be able to contribute to conversations with your dad. Your family is so successful, and I don't want them to think I'm some gold digger who doesn't understand business. I want to prove I can be an asset." It made sense. Daniel had always been a little insecure about coming from a less wealthy background. Of course he'd want to impress his father. But the questions kept getting more specific. About upcoming mergers, about which companies are struggling, about internal family discussions that happen behind closed doors, about the new government contracts Monroe Tech was bidding on, about the company's cybersecurity protocols, which seemed like an odd thing for someone in corporate finance to be curious about. "How does your dad decide which companies to acquire?" Daniel asked another night, this time while they were in bed, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "Like, what's his process for identifying targets?" His friends started to notice, too. Her best friend Zara, who worked as a lawyer downtown and had known Lily since college, pulled her aside 3 months before the wedding during what was supposed to be a fun night out in Fremont. "Lil, I love you, but something feels wrong about Daniel lately," Zara said, cornering her in the bathroom of their favorite dive bar. "He seems different, more calculating." "Different how?" Lily asked, immediately defensive. She was looking at herself in the dingy mirror, reapplying lipstick and trying to avoid Zara's concerned expression. "I can't put my finger on it, but when he looks at you now, it doesn't feel like love. It feels like he's studying you, like you're a problem he's trying to solve." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "And the questions he asks about your work, about your family, they're weird, Lil. Last week at trivia night, he spent 20 minutes grilling me about the legal structure of family businesses. Why would your fiancé need to know that?" Lily felt a flutter of anxiety in her stomach, but she pushed it down. Pre-wedding jitters, she told herself. Everyone gets paranoid before their big day. Even the most solid couple starts second-guessing everything when the pressure of a wedding builds up. "You're overthinking it," she told Zara. "Daniel loves me. He proposed on top of the Columbia Center, for God's sake. You can't fake that kind of romance." She should have listened to Zara. But there was one more thing that should have been a red flag. Something that Lily would replay in her mind over and over later. A week before the wedding, she was staying late at the Monroe Tech offices, putting finishing touches on a presentation for a potential client. It was almost 11 p.m. when her phone buzzed with the text from Daniel. "Working late again? Don't forget to eat something. Love you." Sweet, right? Except Daniel thought she was at home. She'd told him she was having a quiet night in, planning to do face masks and watch Netflix. She hadn't mentioned working late because she didn't want him to worry about her being downtown alone at night. So how did he know where she was? When she asked him about it the next morning, Daniel looked genuinely confused. "What are you talking about? You texted me saying you were at the office." Lily checked her phone. There was no text from her to him, but Daniel seemed so genuinely puzzled that she started to doubt her own memory. Had she texted him and forgotten? She had been so stressed with wedding planning, maybe she was losing track of things. "I must have sent it without thinking. Sorry, my brain is like Swiss cheese right now." Daniel laughed and kissed her forehead. "Pre-wedding brain is real. Don't worry, in 2 weeks we'll be married and you can relax." But deep down, Lily knew she hadn't sent that text. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a small voice was asking, if Daniel didn't get a text from her, how did he know she was working late? She ignored that voice. She had a wedding to finish planning. 2 weeks before the wedding, Lily's world started to crack. She was at Daniel's apartment on a Saturday afternoon, looking for her phone charger. Daniel had gone to pick up his tux for the final fitting. At least that's what he'd told her. She was planning to do some work while he was gone, maybe finalize the seating chart that had been giving her nightmares for weeks. She'd looked everywhere for the charger, the bedroom, the kitchen, even the bathroom cabinet where Daniel kept his fancy skincare products that probably cost more than most people's rent. Finally, she checked his home office, the room he usually kept locked because work documents, you know how it is with client confidentiality. But today, for some reason, it was unlocked. Lily pushed the door open and immediately felt like she was intruding. Daniel's desk was immaculate. No scattered papers, no coffee rings, everything precisely arranged. It looked more like a movie set than an actual workspace. She was just about to leave when she spotted her charger cord peeking out from behind the desk. As she bent down to grab it, she accidentally knocked over a stack of papers that had been sitting on the edge. As she knelt down to pick them up, one document caught her eye. It had her father's company logo at the top, Monroe Tech letterhead. But that was impossible. Why would Daniel have Monroe Tech documents in his home office? Confused and starting to feel a cold dread in her stomach, Lily read further, and what she found made her blood run cold. Project Infiltration Monroe Tech Acquisition Strategy. It was a detailed 47-page business plan, but not just any business plan. It was a step-by-step guide for infiltrating Monroe Tech through what the document called romantic relationship with primary target Lily Monroe, daughter of CEO Robert Monroe. The document was dated 3 years and 2 months ago, 2 weeks before she had met Daniel at the charity gala. Her hands were shaking as she read the executive summary. Phase 1, establish romantic relationship with subject. Gain trust through shared interests, emotional manipulation, and calculated vulnerability displays. Phase 2, integrate into family structure. Obtain invitation to family events, business discussions, and internal company meetings. Phase 3, extract confidential information regarding cybersecurity protocols, client lists, government contracts, and upcoming acquisitions. Phase 4, utilize relationship status, engagement/marriage, to gain deeper access to company systems and financial records. Phase 5, execute hostile takeover using insider information to target company vulnerabilities. At the bottom of Daniel's unmistakable handwriting were notes about her, personal things she'd shared with him during their most intimate moments. Her fears about living up to her father's legacy, her insecurities about whether people liked her for herself or her money, her worry that she'd never be as brilliant as her dad, her secret dream of maybe stepping back from the business someday to write novels. All of it was cataloged like research data, like she was a specimen being studied. Lily flipped through more pages, each one making her feel sicker. There were financial records showing payments from Hartweld Industries, Monroe Tech's biggest competitor, totaling $2.3 million over 3 years. monthly payments of $65,000 with bonuses for milestone achievements. Screenshots of text messages between Daniel and someone named Jay Hartwell. Jonathan Hartwell, the CEO of Hartwell Industries. Messages discussing the Monroe Project in clinical, business-like terms. Target has agreed to engagement. Timeline accelerated. Daniel. Excellent work. Wedding provides perfect cover for final phase. Ensure access to family trust documents and board meeting records. Jay Hartwell. The little princess has no idea what's coming. She actually thinks I love her. Daniel. Maintain the charade until we have everything we need. Then end it publicly. Maximum humiliation will prevent her from interfering with the takeover. Jay Hartwell. There were photos, surveillance photos of Lily at work, at home, meeting with friends, photos of her father at the office, at restaurants, getting into his car, her parents' house, her apartment building, all taken with telephoto lenses, all stamped with dates going back 3 years. Lily found a folder labeled Personal Intel. Inside were detailed psychological profiles, not just of her, but of her entire family. Her mother's shopping habits, her father's golf schedule, her younger brother's college grades. They had mapped out every aspect of the Monroe family's life. Have you ever had a moment where your entire reality just shatters? Where everything you thought you knew, everything you believed in suddenly becomes a lie? That's what happened to Lily in that moment. 3 years of her life, all the love she'd poured out, all the dreams they'd built together, all the moments she'd treasured, watching movies on Sunday mornings, their trip to Italy last summer, the way he'd hold her when she had nightmares, the silly inside jokes they'd developed. It was all fake. All of it. She sat there on Daniel's expensive hardwood floor, surrounded by evidence of his betrayal, and cried until she had no tears left. She cried for the Daniel she thought she knew, for the love she thought they'd shared, for the future she thought they were building together. But then, as she sat there in that sterile office, surrounded by the ruins of her fairy tale, something shifted inside her. You know what they say about the Monroe family? They don't stay down long. And suddenly, instead of heartbreak, Lily felt something else rising in her chest. Something cold and sharp and calculating. Rage. You know what they say about the Monroe family? They don't just get mad. They get even. Lily could have confronted Daniel right then. She could have called off the wedding, exposed him publicly, and walked away. That's what any normal person would do. But Lily Monroe wasn't just any normal person. She was a strategist, just like her father. And she realized something. Daniel thought he was playing her, but he had no idea who he was really dealing with. So instead of falling apart, Lily got to work. She carefully photographed every document, every message, every piece of evidence. She hired a private investigator to dig deeper into Daniel's connections with Hartwell Industries. She discovered that this wasn't just about corporate espionage. Daniel owed massive gambling debts, and Hartwell had offered to clear them in exchange for inside access to Monroe Tech. But here's the thing. Lily also discovered that her father, Robert, already suspected something. Robert hadn't built his empire by being naive. He'd been quietly investigating Daniel for months, and he was just waiting for the right moment to act. "Dad," said Lily when she finally told him what she'd found, "I have an idea, but it's going to require some acting on both of our parts." Robert looked at his daughter, really looked at her, and saw not just his little girl, but his true successor. "What do you need me to do?" Together, they crafted the perfect trap. They created fake documents about a secret merger that would be worth hundreds of millions of dollars to whoever could get inside information. They made sure Daniel would overhear conversations about it. They dangled the bait perfectly. And Daniel? He took it hook, line, and sinker. The night before the wedding, Lily got a call from her PI. "He's planning to humiliate you at the altar," the investigator said. "We intercepted communications saying he wants to destroy her publicly before taking everything." Lily smiled. "Perfect. That's exactly what I was hoping he'd do." The morning of the wedding, Lily woke up feeling strangely calm. She'd spent 2 weeks preparing for this moment, and she was ready. She had her hair and makeup done at her parents' house, surrounded by her bridesmaids, Zara, her college roommate Jessica, her cousin Emma, and her sister-in-law Katie. They kept commenting on how serene she looked, how she seemed to have this inner glow. "Most brides are nervous wrecks," Zara said, watching Lily sit perfectly still while the makeup artist worked on her eyes. "But you look like you're about to conquer the world." "I feel good," Lily said, meeting Zara's eyes in the mirror. "Really good. Like everything is exactly as it should be." If only she knew. Lily's dress was a custom Vera Wang creation. Silk crepe with delicate beading, a cathedral train, and a neckline that was elegant but not too revealing. It had cost $15,000 and taken 6 months to make. When she put it on, she looked like a princess from a fairy tale. But princesses in fairy tales didn't usually have FBI agents on speed dial. The ceremony was at the Seattle Asian Art Museum, just as she'd planned. The space was transformed with thousands of white roses, soft lighting, and flowing silk drapes. 200 guests filled the chairs. Family, friends, colleagues, and a few FBI agents disguised as plus ones. Daniel looked handsome in his custom tuxedo, smiling and shaking hands with guests as they arrived. He played the part of the perfect groom beautifully. Charming, gracious, clearly in love with his bride. He embraced Lily's father warmly, thanked her mother for welcoming him into the family, and posed for photos with a smile that looked genuine. Only Lily could see the coldness behind his eyes, the calculation in his movements, the way he seemed to be mentally cataloging which guests were worth networking with. As she walked down the aisle, her arm linked with her father, Lily caught Daniel's eye. For a split second, she saw something flicker across his face. Anticipation? Cruelty? Like a predator that had finally cornered its prey. She smiled sweetly and kept walking, her heart steady, her steps confident. The officiant was Reverend Patricia Williams, who had known the Monroe family for decades. She had baptized Lily, confirmed her, and had been looking forward to this day for months. "Dearly beloved," Reverend Patricia Williams began, "we are gathered here today to witness the union of Lily and Daniel in holy matrimony. Marriage is a sacred bond built on trust, honesty, and unconditional love." The irony wasn't lost on anyone who knew the truth. The ceremony proceeded normally for 20 minutes. Beautiful music from a string quartet, heartfelt readings from Lily's brother about the nature of love, the traditional passages about marriage being a partnership between equals. And then came the vows. Daniel went first. And, oh, he was good. He'd clearly been practicing this performance for weeks. Daniel said, his voice carrying perfectly through the museum's acoustics, "Lily, 3 years ago, you walked into my life and changed everything. You made me believe in love, in partnership, in the possibility of building something beautiful with another person." He paused, looking directly into his eyes with what appeared to be genuine emotion. "You are my heart, my soul, my everything. You're brilliant, compassionate, and stronger than you know. I promise to love you, honor you, and protect you for all the days of my life. I promise to be your partner in all things, to support your dreams, and to build a future with you that's worthy of the love we share." The crowd was eating it up. Lily could hear sniffles, see people dabbing at their eyes with tissues. If they only knew what was coming next. Then Reverend Williams turned to Lily. "Do you have vows you'd like to share?" Lily smiled. "I do." She pulled out a folded piece of paper, not the romantic handwritten vows she'd originally planned, but something else entirely. "Daniel," she began, her voice clear and strong, "3 years ago, I thought I met the love of my life. I thought I found someone who saw me for who I really am, who loved me for myself and not for what I could give them." She paused, looking directly at him with what appeared to be genuine emotion. "I was wrong." A murmur went through the crowd. This wasn't the tone anyone expected from wedding vows. "But you know what? I'm grateful for that mistake because it taught me something important about myself. It taught me that I'm stronger than I thought, smarter than I gave myself credit for, and absolutely unwilling to let anyone, not even someone I loved, betray my family's company. Daniel's face had gone pale. He was starting to realize this wasn't going according to his plan. You see, everyone, Lily continued, turning to address the crowd. Daniel has been lying to me from the day we met. His real name is David Harrison. He's a professional con artist who was hired by our competitors to seduce me, manipulate me, and steal from my family's company. The gasps from the crowd were audible. People were turning to each other, confused, wondering if this was some kind of joke. And the beautiful thing is, he thought he was so smart. He thought he could outsmart a Monroe. Lily nodded to the AV technician she had secretly hired. The screens around the venue lit up. And there for everyone to see were the documents, the payments from Hartwell Industries, the detailed plans to infiltrate Monroe Tech, the surveillance photos, the text messages discussing how to destroy the little princess. But Lily wasn't done. Oh, and David, remember that secret merger you were so interested in, the one you passed information about to Hartwell Industries 2 days ago? Daniel's face had gone from pale to green. That merger was fake. We created it specifically to catch you in the act of corporate espionage and fraud. You could have heard a pin drop in that museum. Ladies and gentlemen, Lily continued, her voice never wavering, I want to thank all of you for being here today to witness not a wedding, but the end of a 3-year federal investigation into corporate espionage and fraud. She gestured to several guests who were now standing up and removing badges from their jacket pockets. David Harrison, you're under arrest for wire fraud, conspiracy, attempted theft of classified materials, and conspiracy to commit corporate espionage. Agent Rodriguez stepped forward with handcuffs. You have the right to remain silent. As they led Daniel away in handcuffs, still in his wedding tuxedo, stumbling and trying to protest his innocence, Lily turned back to her stunned guests. I know this isn't the wedding celebration any of us expected, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. But sometimes justice is more important than cake. Now, Daniel expected Lily to crumble. He expected tears, shock, maybe even for her to run away in humiliation. What he got instead was Lily looking him dead in the eye and saying clearly and loudly enough for everyone to hear, I do too, darling. I can't wait to show everyone exactly who you really are. The confusion on Daniel's face was priceless. Lily turned to face their guests, still holding Daniel's hand, still smiling that perfect bridal smile. Before we continue, she announced, I have a little surprise for my new husband. You see, Daniel has been working so hard lately on a very special project, and I thought our wedding day would be the perfect time to share it with everyone. She nodded to the AV team who she'd secretly coordinated with days earlier. The screens around the venue lit up, and there for everyone to see were the documents, the messages, the payments from Hartwell Industries, the detailed plans to infiltrate and destroy Monroe Tech. Every piece of evidence of Daniel's betrayal displayed in high definition for 200 guests to read. The gasps from the crowd were audible, but Lily wasn't done. Oh, and Daniel, remember that secret merger you were so interested in? The one you passed information about to Hartwell Industries yesterday? Daniel's face had gone completely white. That merger was fake. We created it specifically to see what you'd do with the information. And thanks to you, we now have concrete evidence of corporate espionage to hand over to the FBI. You could have heard a pin drop in that venue. Ladies and gentlemen, Lily continued, her voice never wavering, I want to thank you all for being here today to witness not a wedding, but the end of a 3-year con job. Daniel Hayes never loved me. He was hired by our competitors to seduce me, manipulate me, and steal from my family. She turned back to Daniel, who was standing there like a deer in headlights. Did you really think that a Monroe would be that easy to fool? Security guards, who Lily had arranged to be present for crowd control, stepped forward. Daniel Hayes, you're under arrest for corporate espionage, fraud, and conspiracy. As they led Daniel away in handcuffs, still in his wedding tuxedo, Lily turned back to her stunned guests. "I know this isn't the wedding celebration any of us expected," she said, "but sometimes the truth is more important than the party. For those of you who truly know me, you know that I would never let anyone, not even someone I loved, hurt my family or our business." She paused, taking a deep breath. "And for those of you who might be wondering, yes, I loved him. I loved him with everything I had, but I loved my family and my integrity more." The venue was still completely silent. "Now," Lily said, her voice getting stronger, "we have an open bar, amazing food, and a live band. So while this might not be the wedding reception we planned, it can still be one hell of a party. Who's ready to celebrate the fact that justice actually exists?" And you know what? They did. After the initial shock wore off, after people had processed what they'd just witnessed, the party was incredible. Lily danced with her father, laughed with her friends, and celebrated not love, but something maybe even more important, her own strength. The aftermath was swift and decisive. Within hours, the story was everywhere. Tech heiress turns her wedding into FBI sting operation. Corporate spy arrested at the altar in elaborate scheme. Seattle wedding becomes a federal case. But the real consequences were just beginning. David Harrison, because that's who he really was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. The charges included wire fraud, conspiracy, attempted theft of classified government materials, and running a multi-state romance scam operation. Jonathan Hartwell and 3 other Hartwell Industries executives were indicted on conspiracy charges. The company's stock price collapsed within a week, and they ultimately filed for bankruptcy 6 months later. The other women David had been scamming, Jessica in Portland and Amanda in Vancouver, got their money back and testified against him in court. Jessica sent Lily a letter afterward that just said, "Thank you for stopping him before he destroyed anyone else." Rebecca Santos, the private investigator, said it was the most satisfying case of her career. She said, "I've never seen someone flip the script like that," she told a reporter. "Usually the victim discovers the truth and falls apart. Lily discovered the truth and built a prosecution case." But what about Lily herself? In the weeks following what the media dubbed the wedding sting, Lily threw herself into work. She officially became CEO of Monroe Tech when her father stepped down 6 months later, and under her leadership, the company expanded into new markets they'd never dreamed of. She became something of a legend in business circles. The woman who turned her own wedding into a corporate espionage bust. The bride who chose justice over heartbreak. Harvard Business School now teaches a case study about her strategic thinking and crisis management. But late at night, when she was alone in her penthouse apartment, looking out at the Seattle skyline, Lily would sometimes wonder, what if some part of David's feelings had been real? What if somewhere in that 3-year con, he'd actually started to care about her? Then she'd remember his words at the altar. "I never loved you. I only did this to destroy you. Hope you enjoyed the fairy tale, princess, because it's about to become your worst nightmare." And she'd remember the surveillance photos, the psychological profiles of her family, the clinical way he'd cataloged her fears and insecurities, the other women he'd been scamming while engaged to her. No, none of it had been real. Not the first date that lasted until sunrise, not the handwritten notes, not the proposal on the rooftop. All of it had been performance, manipulation, a means to an end. And she'd remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is refuse to be anyone's victim. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal, though. It was the way it changed her. For months afterward, Lily found it difficult to trust anyone. She'd analyze every conversation looking for hidden motives. She'd question whether her friends liked her for herself or for what she could do for them. She went to therapy twice a week and slowly learned to distinguish between healthy caution and paranoid suspicion. Zara, her best friend, was patient with her during this time. "He didn't just lie to you about who he was," Zara said during one of their long walks around Green Lake. "He made you doubt your own judgment. That's what abusers do. They make you question reality itself." "But I should have seen it," Lily would say. "All those red flags, all those moments when something felt off. How did I miss it?" "Because you loved him," Zara replied simply. "And when you love someone, you want to believe the best about them. That's not a character flaw, Lil. That's what makes you human." It took almost 2 years for Lily to feel like herself again. 2 years of therapy, of rebuilding her confidence, of learning to trust her instincts while still remaining open to genuine connection. And then at a tech conference in San Francisco, she met Dr. Marcus Thompson. Marcus was a cybersecurity researcher, brilliant and kind, with an easy laugh and eyes that crinkled when he smiled. He knew who I was, of course. Everyone in our industry knew the story of the wedding sting. But when he looked at me, she didn't see calculation or opportunity. She saw genuine interest, respect, and something that might have been admiration. "You know," he said over coffee after his keynote speech, "I've read about what you did, what you went through, and I just want to say that took incredible courage." "Courage," Lily laughed. "I think most people would say it was elaborate revenge."
Maybe both, Marcus said. But you protected your family, your company, and probably dozens of other women he would have targeted. That's heroic, no matter how you look at it. Their first date was coffee that turned into lunch, that turned into a walk along the Embarcadero. Marcus told her about his work developing secure communication systems for humanitarian organizations. Lily found herself talking about her dreams of expanding Monroe Tech into developing countries, using technology to solve infrastructure problems. When Marcus asked her about her family, it was with genuine curiosity, not the calculating questions David had asked. When she mentioned her father's business, Marcus didn't immediately follow up with questions about company operations or financial details. "He sounds like an interesting man," Marcus said. "I'd love to meet him someday, if you'd be comfortable with that." It was such a simple statement, but it made Lily's heart race. Not because of romantic excitement, but because of what it represented. Someone who wanted to know her family because they cared about her, not because they saw an opportunity. They dated long distance for 8 months. Marcus would fly up to Seattle, or Lily would go down to San Francisco. They talked for hours on the phone, sent each other articles they found interesting, shared photos of their daily lives. And slowly, carefully, Lily learned to trust again. Their engagement was the opposite of the elaborate rooftop proposal David had orchestrated. Marcus proposed during a quiet moment at her parents' house after Sunday dinner, while they were washing dishes together. "I love you," he said, turning off the water and taking her soapy hands in his. "I love your laugh and your brilliant mind and the way you light up when you talk about solving problems. I love that you're strong enough to stand up to people who try to hurt you and kind enough to worry about strangers you'll never meet." He pulled a simple ring from his pocket, not the flashy diamond David had used, but a vintage Art Deco piece that looked like it belonged in a museum. "Will you marry me? Not because it makes business sense, not because it's convenient, but because I want to spend the rest of my life learning new things about you." Lily said yes, through tears, happy tears this time. Their wedding was small and private. 50 people in Lily's parents' backyard with string lights and her mother's roses, and a minister who had known Lily since she was 12. No photographers hiding in bushes, no surveillance, no federal agents in disguise. Just 2 people who had found each other after learning the hard way what love wasn't supposed to feel like. Marcus kept his promise. 5 years later, he was still discovering new things about his wife, like how she sang off-key in the shower, how she cried at sad commercials, how she was secretly terrified of butterflies but would never admit it. And Lily? She learned that real love didn't feel like a performance or a test. It felt like coming home. So what's the moral of this story?
Maybe it's that justice exists, even when it takes longer than we'd like. Maybe it's that strong people can survive betrayal and come out even stronger. Maybe it's that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you sets you up for the best thing that ever happens to you. Or maybe it's simpler than that. Maybe it's just that when someone shows you who they really are, you should believe them. And when someone whispers, "I never loved you," at your wedding altar, they're doing you a favor. They're setting you free to find someone who actually deserves you. So what do you think? Was Lily right to expose David publicly like that? Should she have handled it privately and just called off the wedding? Or was the public humiliation exactly what he deserved after 3 years of lies? And more importantly, if someone whispered, "I never loved you," at your wedding altar, what would you do? Would you have the courage to turn your heartbreak into justice? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story taught you anything, let it be this: never underestimate someone who loves their family more than they fear heartbreak. And never, ever try to con someone smarter than you are. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.